Can you hear me? All right. So then I'll, recognize everybody, and I'm, Judge will speak. He'll recognize everyone, and then he'll open it up to speaking, and then once at that point happens, anyone can recognize and say hi. Anyone can recognize and say hi.
It's like my phone is mute now. So you could just leave your, you don't need to be on your phone if you don't want to, but know that that's an alternate for you in the event that you're unable to keep a steady signal on your Zoom. I have to do it because I live out here on the east side, and so my internet goes in and out, but this at least allows me to keep listening to what everyone's saying.
Okay, I just don't like that echo. Never happened before.
All right, so I'm only going to use it just so that I can hear. Okay, let me pull up a program. Okay. I'm going to send this to you guys. So we have, you confirmed, we had David Alvarado confirm. He did say he had gone out of work around 5:15, but that he had to stop by the sheriff's office. He said he might be running a little late, but once he's done, he'll try to get on. And then we have 2 attorneys that are going to be attending tonight's virtual meeting, Attorney Pepe Caso and Lauren Sepulveda. And Lauren holds a position within the state bar. I think she's I don't know if she's the young lawyer representative, but she's agreed to get on the call with us. And then we invited also the local parties, advocacy groups, each rep from each Democrat and Republican Party, and there was no response other than the young Republicans president, Alma Perez. And she agreed, but I don't see her on. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I appreciate you all for accepting Judge's invitation to meet virtually and discuss important topics within our community. We do have about three more invited guests that are about to make their way into the Zoom meeting. We are broadcasting live via YouTube channel. And so thank you for being with us. And I am Mari. I am a huge supporter, and I also make sure that he does a good job while he is on the bench as well. And give me 1 minute. I have one participant who is asking for credentials. Okay. So I'm going to wanted to recognize, before Judge gets on with us, I would like to introduce each one of you and some of our invited, and who are some of our invited guests included. We did invite Mr. David Alvarado, and he is with the RGV Public Safety Coalition. He advised us that he is just getting off work and trying to make his way on the Adult Probation Association. We have attorney within the community, Pepe Caso, who was invited and accepted invitation to participate in this evening's conversation, and attorney Lauren Sepulveda. And Lauren, you are with, can you, I don't want to get your title correct.
Okay. I'm past president of the Hidalgo County Young Lawyers Association and current sitting secretary of the Texas Young Lawyers Association.
Okay, thank you so much. And we also invited the political party chairs of each party were invited to participate. We also invited a young advocacy group president, Alma Perez, to be present. She will be on. She is feeling a little under the weather, so excuse her if she's not live on the video like everyone else, but she said she wanted to make sure she was present and participated. We're going to be having conversations that include topics regarding current court administration and get out the vote efforts within the community, and how do we move forward into November. Each one of you will have an opportunity to ask Judge a question of your choosing, and we will be live, and he will be able to answer any of the questions from public. So if you are watching live via I will be moderating those conversations as we continue in this evening's discussion with the judge. And so thank you. And Judge, we're ready for you, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. Special thanks to Ms. Sanchez, Ms. Sepulveda, Ms. Perez, who've taken the time to be here today. I'm Judge Ismael Fonseca of the 464th District Court. I was appointed to the bench last year. It's been 10 months since I've been on the bench. It's been a real pleasure, and I've been honored to serve the people of Hidalgo County in this fashion for these past 10 months. And I wanted to have this discussion, bring some people from our community to talk about, first, to get to know me, what the court has been doing these past 10 months, especially in the circumstances we're in the pandemic, and how the courts are continuing to function, how I'm trying to make sure that cases move on, they move forward, and at the same time, making sure that people stay safe and healthy. So it's not an easy thing to do, but we all need to put as much effort as we can to make sure that the wheels of justice keep turning, and that people, defendants, and people in family matters and civil litigants are able to have the court address their concerns. So I'm very proud to say that prior to the pandemic, our court was averaging more than one case a month. Unfortunately, the pandemic has not allowed us to have any jury trials, but that hasn't stopped us from a couple of bench trials. And one of the things I wanted to announce and make sure people knew is that I encourage people to explore the option of having trials to the court to make sure that cases are resolved quickly. Because the way things are looking now, we won't be having any jury trials anytime soon. And the court's dockets are becoming increasingly strained because of the situation that we're in, especially family matters and civil cases. Defendants accused of a crime are going to have priority to have their cases brought to a jury. So there are a lot of concerns, and obviously voting is a concern. I was pleasantly surprised at how things have been going with the primary runoff, and what our local authorities have done to try to make sure that people do have the right access to the right to vote. So thank you all for being here. I don't want to filibuster and go on and on. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask questions of me as your judge, and both in and out of the courtroom. So let us start. Ms. Sanchez from probation. You guys have been very helpful, have been continuing to monitor cases, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the rest of the judges that we appreciate that, because you play an important part in the system.
Thank you. Well, we've had to juggle trying to be safe on our end and keep the defendants safe. We've got screening questions before they come in. We've got the screening questions over the phone before they come in. So if anybody's even saying they have a sniffle, we do it over the phone, but we do make sure that we're continuing contact with all of them. Because stuff is being done over the phone, we're having more contact with them monthly because it is over the phone, and we just want to make sure that they know they're being monitored still. We can see the difference. What I do at the department, since I don't have a caseload that I supervise, I do assessments that the state requires, which they're called the Texas Risk Assessment System. And those are set up so that we can, one, identify a need where they may need help. And then second, what's their risk to the community and their risk of reoffending. And those are done once a year. So we've seen the decline in the amount that we have to do daily and weekly because of the fact that the courts aren't running. So basically what we're doing on my part is half the day, I've got at least half the day full doing the reassessments because the state requires them every 1 year, but we've noticed the decline in the intakes that are coming in. And then we've seen a lot of the fact that the intakes that are coming in are jail cases, which were the ones that didn't bond out. They've been there for a little bit, and those are the ones that are taking precedence. We are hoping that the courts pick up so that we do have more intakes coming in. That actually is affecting our budget. So it's affecting us in different ways, not just manpower-wise, because we've actually had to furlough some people because of the fact that we don't have as many people on probation as we normally do because of the fact that the courts are not running.
So people know the budget is tied to the fees that probationers are paying into the system. So without that, unfortunately, the department is unable to keep a lot of employees. So that's definitely been a concern as these months have progressed, because the resources are being depleted. But I'm glad to know that you've been continuing to monitor, even if it's by phone, and it may be even more frequent. And you mentioned something about the courts getting back, or hoping that the courts will get back, being back online or moving forward. But what more can we do in the courtroom to make sure that cases are moving along? And I say that because I try to make sure that everything continues as it has before. I'm hearing suppression hearings, custody disputes, in addition to arraignments. The only thing that I obviously can't do is a jury trial. So what more can be done to try to pick things up or get cases moving?
I know that we've been told, and this is just, I guess I don't want to say rumor, but I've heard that some judges just are not running court at all. They just don't want to hold their dockets, and I guess until it settles down a bit more. And I guess it's just basically having everyone do a little bit. Because I know that on the intakes that I've had, I do notice that it is certain judges that we're getting intakes on, meaning they're placing people on probation. Although I don't have record of the ones that are maybe just getting time served, so maybe they are holding those and we just don't know the numbers because we're just seeing what's coming into our department.
Right. Okay. Well, and I look forward to hearing from some of the lawyers that were invited to get their point of view on that. And it's supposed to be questions not from you, not from me. And I don't want to grill you with what probation's doing, but I appreciate you answering my question. I don't know if you have any other questions.
We're good. I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, let me now that we've broached the subject, let me bring in Ms. Sepulveda. Thank you for being here and representing the young lawyer community, not just here in the Valley, but in Texas. These are obviously unprecedented times, and you've heard some of the concerns that Ms. Sanchez has brought up, I'm sure, and I saw your head shaking quite a bit while she was speaking. So I'll let you say something and ask any questions.
We're seeing a lot of the same stuff as Ms. Sanchez. I work at the district attorney's office, so we know how difficult it's been during these past few months to get defendants processing times. It used to be when we would hold a docket, we could please somebody out, do paperwork, get them pled out in about 20 minutes. Now, if they're in jail, that process is taking up to a week, just because every single person that used to be able to speak to that defendant, certify them, fill out the judgment, has to do so remotely. And that I know has impacted us greatly. I know some dockets are not running. Basically, if it's not a jail case, they're not running it. And luckily, I have a judge that, as you know, Judge Fonseca works pretty hard. And so we're trying to move what cases we can. We're trying to get what cases we can out of jail. As for the young lawyers, it's really, this COVID pandemic has impacted them greatly. A lot of the young lawyers that are not working either at the district attorney's office, at the public defender's office, or with a firm are essentially solo practitioners. And a lot of them that practice criminal law are on the wheel for indigent appointments. And that wheel has slowed down greatly because we're not getting those non-jail cases set for arraignment or set to come in, or they're getting reset for months. These attorneys are not able to take their clients' cases, figure their clients' cases out, resolve them, whether that's with dismissal or a plea, and they're not being able to essentially earn a living at this point, or at least not make as much as they were used to making before. And I think it's impacted the young lawyers, especially because they don't have maybe that base or that reputation to bring in non-appointed clients during these times. The family law lawyers I talked to are doing excellent. They stay pretty busy during this pandemic, but we've definitely seen a sharp decline in criminal. I don't practice civil, but my sister does have her own civil firm, and I know they've been staying pretty busy since most of the civil practice can be done remotely, depositions, anything that they need to do. So it's disproportionately, at least from what I've seen and from talking with young lawyers in the community across the state, it's really been the criminal practitioners that have been greatly impacted by this, specifically the defense bar. And with that comes a whole host of other problems. I know at least statewide, we're very concerned about wellness at this point. Attorney wellness is always a huge issue for us, but with the stresses of this pandemic, increased isolation, increased stress, increased financial worries, we're really concerned about how we're going to move forward. And at least for us, our main concern is, what can we do? We know we can't resume normal operations. I don't think anybody's asking that. We don't want to put people's lives at risk, but what more can we do as lawyers, as judges, to get us at least moving back in the direction of normal, at least moving some of our cases? And I think that's, I know I don't have the answers for the judge, but I think as an attorney, for us, it seems like everybody's got to do just a little bit more and understand and have patience with one another, have patience with the other agencies and the departments, because stuff is complicated and it's hard now, and we're all really struggling.
Right. And it's also an issue. I'm also a young lawyer. I'm on the bench, but I'm also a young lawyer. I'm under 40, and I know it can be difficult. And young lawyers also have young families, so there's that concern, the wellness concern, that I understand very well. Trying to stay healthy, and I've had some lawyers say, because there have been discussions about what type of in-person proceedings to have in the courtroom, and there have been lawyers that have voiced their concern about that when I bring it up. So it's something I keep in mind very much, but it's that balance of, well, then how do we move cases forward? And I agree that we could be doing more, not because I lack the disposition, but rather because I'm not seeing that we have attorneys that have a little bit more, I guess, a willingness to jump through those hoops, or it does take a while to get pleas taken care of. Unfortunately, that's just the circumstance. That's what we're living through. But if we had some more, I'm always asking after every docket, every Wednesday when we have after the jail docket, I'm asking the prosecutors in my court, where are the pleas? Why aren't we taking more pleas? Why aren't we just talking about it? And it's from what I hear, it's not the prosecutors working in my courtroom, at least, but it's rather making sure that lawyers do a little bit more, get out there. But then again, having to go to the jail and having to sit down with them, it's a concern. Obviously, they want to stay healthy for themselves and for their families. And I was just telling one of the lawyers yesterday, that's why I'm hoping that indigent defense can help lawyers have contact with people in the Hidalgo County Jail, so that they're able to have these conversations via Zoom, for example, and try to use the technology that we have to do that. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's part of the equation, the wellness issue. And also, you said it very well. We all have to do a little bit more. We have to be willing to do more to get stuff going. I've told everybody who appears before me, if you need something, let me know. We can accommodate. The good thing about being home, I am 10 feet away from my bedroom right now. It doesn't take long. I'm locked here. I'm not going anywhere. So if you need a hearing, you'll be heard. And so as judges, I think we need to have that disposition in making sure that we're available for lawyers to accommodate that. The fact that it's going to take you more time to get that plea done, to go and talk to your client. So So thank you for that, Mr. Pula. Any questions for me as the judge of the 464th?
Well, I guess our main concern just as young lawyers is what do you think, as I know we talked a little bit about everybody doing a little bit more. One of the things that I think this pandemic has highlighted is maybe the technology gap between the generation of lawyers, right? There's memes out there about like, oh, here goes another 12 minutes of somebody trying to mute themselves that doesn't know how to unmute. One of the things that I think I've seen in our office and that I think young lawyers everywhere could better implement is helping our older lawyers, although I know they don't like to be called that, older lawyers out with technology issues. And I mean, the technology, once you learn it, is easy, but if you're unfamiliar with it, I think that intimidates some of the lawyers. And I think it may be intimidating some of the lawyers from speaking with their clients via Zoom or, we're lucky enough where we've had witnesses appear via Zoom that are not even in the lawyer's office. They're at their home and the lawyers will ask them questions. And I just think that maybe, what do you think as a young lawyer bar we could do to kind of help the process along better? Because it seems, at least from the young lawyers I have contact with on a daily basis, they seem very eager to do more, to get the process started, to get their pleas done. And what can we do, I guess, to help the courts move faster?
Right. It's a reverse mentorship at this point, where the young lawyers should help out their fellow, not older, more experienced attorneys on how to conduct business in this age of technology where we're having to do this, because this is going to stick around for a while. Even if we were to move forward with some jury proceedings, it's going to be slow. And so maybe we should have a CLE for lawyers on how, even just the basics, and they don't even have to show their face, just put their phone on there. Like, this is how we can do that. What I like to do is, every time that we're having court and attorneys seem like they haven't had a chance to talk to the lawyer, that's why we have breakout rooms in Zoom, where, as you need to speak to your client, or I ask the defendant, do you need to talk with your lawyer? I can just put you in a breakout room. Nobody's going to listen in. I have control over that. And if I were to walk into that breakout room, you'd know that I'm walking in. Not that I would do that, but if that's a concern, making sure that attorney-client communications remain privileged, don't worry about it. We can take care of that. And some attorneys have, taken me up on that. And especially those who may not want to go to the jail, then, you know what? Let's just set it for hearing. I don't have to hear you. I'll just put you in a breakout room, and there you go. You've just had an opportunity to visit with your client on Zoom, and then I move with the rest of the docket. So at least those are some of the things that I've been able to do to make sure that we bridge that generational gap, and that our experienced attorneys, who it may not just be the working of technology, but just having trust in technology, and doing things the old way. I think back at my years at the firm prior to taking the bench, and trying to put everything on just have an iPad to take to court, not have to carry that, a binder, or things of that nature, where it's difficult, even if it's someone that's not old per se, but is so used to practicing with pen and paper. So maybe we should looking into that reverse mentorship and see what we can do to help bridge that generational gap. So
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Pulveda. Let me bring in Ms. Bettis. Ms. Bettis is an advocate for young people, and not necessarily being a lawyer, but being out in the community, and what you know about what's going on in the court system. I don't know how you want to contribute to what you've heard, or have any questions.
Okay, this subject is very difficult for me, as I'm more in tune with the business side of the world. But I did have a question for you in regards to getting out the vote. I think it's really important for us to work together to engage the younger generation. And I wanted to ask, what are some of your thoughts, or what are some ways that you have thought about and engaging some of these younger people to come out and vote?
Right. Well, me being in an election also kind of helps being out there and making sure that people do vote. Now that we're in the middle of a runoff, I'm using social media to bring that awareness and saying, hey, it doesn't take long. And, I'll take this opportunity to tell everybody, I went to go vote. I went last week with the first day of early voting. And for people that are dissuaded because of the pandemic, they're afraid of maybe coming into contact with someone that's infected. Let me tell you, they've done things very well. I really felt like they took every precaution. As you walked in, there was a hand sanitizer. When you hand over your ID for them to look at, they put it in a little bin, so you're not touching each other. There's not that risk of touching each other's fingers. You get a cotton swab to use to touch the screen. I personally took a pencil with me so I could use the eraser, but it wasn't necessary because they were prepared. They had that the cotton swabs that you could use, and you're not touching anything. And then on your way out, you can just put some hand sanitizer on. And there weren't that many people, which is a good thing because you don't have that much. You can do the social distancing and you don't have exposure to a lot of people. But it's unfortunate because you don't have that many people going out there. Luckily, we were able to have an extended period for early voting that allowed more people to space out their voting. So that was helpful, and maybe that will be helpful again in October. Maybe have an extended time for voting, because voting's going to be a little bit different this year also. There's going to be that concern. So we need to educate people on that. And on top of bringing people out to vote generally, as you would any other year, we have that added concern of we're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't want to be standing in line with, hundreds of strangers. Well, we need to make sure that people are comfortable going to vote. And at least our local officials have done a good job in making sure that they do it as safely as possible by providing hand sanitizer with cotton swabs and whatnot. And I was obviously having the social distancing. But for young voters, it's engaging them. Social media is one way. Talking about what's relevant to a young voter. I would talk about my experience in local politics. If you can't break things down to a family or a friend or a political party, you need to talk about issues and talk about what's really important to young voters. I'll take this opportunity, a couple of things that I'm personally concerned with that I'd like to highlight are mental health and expunctions, things that are related to the judicial field. Unfortunately, we have young people that are in trouble. They get in trouble, and that may follow them along the rest of their lives and may stop them from having opportunities to do things for society, for our community. And they need to have that access to expunctions, I think, and making it easier for them to go through that process. It can cost a lot of money to hire an attorney to get an expunction. So I'm personally looking into ways of making that process easier in our county, working with different organizations, see if we can provide some free legal aid of some sort, streamline the process. And then mental health. One of the things I was shocked about when I took the bench is how long it takes for someone with a mental illness to go to a mental health institution. When I was told that when I signed an order to commit, it would take months for that person to get the treatment and care that they needed, it was just beyond me. I could not believe that that's what's happening, that it would take months for someone to get the treatment that they need. And it's the numbers are just staggering on the amount of people that with mental health illness that end up going to that are in our jails. The statistics are just I think you have 3 to 6 times higher the general population. When you look at the general population of jails, it's more likely than not that someone is there because as a result of or because they're suffering from mental illness. That leads to self-medication. It leads to a lot of drug problems. And if we're not able to catch that or treat that early on, then it's just a never-ending cycle for some of these people. So that should be a concern for young people, for our youth. We need to attack this mental health problem that we have in our community, which will avoid a lot of the drug problems that we have, I believe. So talking about these issues, I think engaging people in those issues should help bring out more young people to vote. When you make them think about, these are things that affect us, even if you don't know anyone, don't have a family member that's affected with a mental illness, there are others in our community that are, and it leads to drug problems that we all pay for, because our system is full of people with drug problems, and that puts a burden on the courts. It puts a burden on taxpayers, because then they end up going to jail, and we're taking care of those people. So why let it get to that point? And when I said that, I was shocked that it would take months for someone to get the treatment that they needed in a mental health facility. I was even more shocked that Texas is actually on the top of the list for the better treatment, or it has a better system than most of the states in the nation. So I can only imagine what it looks like in other states. So at least for me, that's been the biggest shock when I took the bench, and which I think is important, that needs to be addressed. And I would just keep talking about that issue, particularly me and as just me. But it's an issue that everybody should be concerned about. Take a look at your representatives and what they stand, and how they stand on the issue to determine who to vote for. So talk about the issues. You have to, and if you're able to engage young people by telling them why it's important, because an 18, 19-year-old may not really care much about a lot of things. I look back when I was 18, 19, I don't think I knew much about the world to make an educated decision when voting. So the only way that you get that 18, 19-year-old is by educating him about the issues. Sorry, I went on and on and on. Sorry, Ms. Bettis. Did I even answer your question?
No, you did. You did. I think you touched on a really important subject, or an issue that not many do. And I hadn't thought about it either. And just listening to you speak about it just encourages me, and it just opens up a whole other world that I would like to touch or tap into. But no, thank you so much for your response.
Sure, absolutely. Glad you asked. And I can talk about that and about other things. So
We do.
Go ahead.
There is a question from someone on YouTube, from Rogelio Alaman.
His question is, Judge Fonseca, while we are dealing with COVID-19, what happens to a veteran if a case dealing with a veteran comes up to your court?
Well, every case is heard, regardless. But if a particular veteran has any issues with appearing in person, then we accommodate. We do what we can to make sure that they're not in a position where they're risking their health. So in my court, there are very few type of hearings that I would hear in person. At this point, the only ones that I've considered having in person with the protocols that the Board of Judges has implemented are outcry hearings on sex abuse cases because of the sensitive nature rather of the case. They tend to be emotional cases, and it's difficult to engage someone in question and answers when in those type of situations. So those are ones that I'm inclined. This is not set in stone. Obviously, if there are any concerns, I'll take those into consideration. And the other type are when you have experts in a family case in a custody dispute where you have a lot of exhibits or a lot of technical testimony that's been provided, that maybe it's better to have that person live and in front of you to ask questions and to get testimony. So as far as, I'm answering a little bit more generally because I don't think that it affects just veterans, but I can tell you that I always take into consideration veteran status in as Ms. Sepulveda probably hears a lot about that in her court. It's important, and it's not only important, it's something that as judges we must do in considering all sorts of things if it's a criminal case, whether it's bond, probation, or whatnot. People's service to their nation should be considered throughout their appearance in the judicial system. So I do consider that. And if a veteran has any particular condition, which would make it a little bit more difficult to health-wise for him or her to appear in court, there are different things that I can do to help them still appear if they want to be appearing in person. You can put them in a separate room and set them up with a computer, especially if they don't have, in Hidalgo County, it's still a very rural county, and where we have a lot of indigent defendants. So if that's the case with one of our veterans and they bring that to my attention, then we'll make sure that they have the means to appear, providing them a computer or a tablet from the office, having them separated from the courtroom. They can link in to what's happening in the courtroom if an in-person hearing is requested or is required. So there are things we can do that I'll take into consideration. Ms. Alon?
Hi, I have, there's one more question on YouTube.
Okay.
All right. The question is, how does the court accommodate to the right of trial by jury in times where having a jury puts people at risk?
That's the $64,000 question, and one that we've been struggling with from the very beginning. I had a jury trial ready to go when this whole thing started, and the Supreme Court said no more jury trials. It's difficult because I have my hands tied. Granted, the Board of Judges does have the authority of voting on it and deciding as a group, how to move forward. But that's where the limitations of our courthouse come in. We don't have a courthouse that can accommodate for social distancing. A couple of meetings ago, I believe our administrative judge, Judge Noe Gonzalez, stated that if we mapped out the auditorium at the courthouse to social distance people, we'd only have room for 22 people to sit down in the auditorium. In a felony sex case, we need 100. So, in my experience, there's no way we can conduct jury selection. And a defendant has a right to have a jury of his or her peers. And the people that, according to some studies that have been conducted statewide, there are big segments of our population that would not show up to jury service if they were compelled to show up for jury service. Among them, those over the age of 65, the indigent, and women with young children or that care for an elderly parent. So you're taking out a big percent of the population of Hidalgo County if those people don't show up for jury duty. And because we cannot accommodate for that many people in an auditorium or anywhere, really, I think maybe at UTRGV there'd be an auditorium that's big enough to fit 100 people 6 feet apart, and that may be the only way. But it's without doing that, without being able to do that from the outset, we just can't guarantee that a defendant is going to have a fair trial. So we can't move forward with jury trials in Hidalgo County at this point. We keep talking about it. We keep thinking and looking at options. I know that we were going to try and have one at UTRGV, but we had this spike in cases that the presiding judge decided it's probably not the best time to experiment and figure things out. And there is a court that tried to do jury selection online through Zoom. It's through a procedure. It's a civil case, and they had about 24, 48 jurors. I saw the jury selection. It's very challenging to do a jury selection online. I can't see how you can do jury selection like we are now. There are connection issues. You don't know if there's anybody else in the room. I can think of a dozen different things that could go wrong with jury selection. There's an outage and you're in the middle of testimony. I mean, what do? You just wait until that person gets back on? I don't know. It's difficult. That being said, despite the difficulties in having a jury trial, our current situation does allow us to reconsider bond. So if you're a defendant, then that's probably something that you want to do, and bring the issue to the court and ask if you're not out on bond, for reconsideration on what the bond is. Maybe there would be some other conditions that can be imposed on the defendant in lieu of a higher bond. So there are things we can do to address the fact that people are sitting in jail waiting for a trial. So that's what I think at this point is the only way that we can address people who are still in jail without having access to posting bond.
Okay, I do see that attorney Fonseca has logged in, Judge. Just want to welcome him to the virtual meeting. Thank you for being with us. I don't know if you have anything to say or a question for a judge, but welcome.
Thank you, Judge. The information you provided has been real helpful. I guess for some of us that work on the civil side of things, what are some of the observations you have, I guess particularly with our fear that cases are just going to start being delayed until, we're hearing that jury trials for civil cases pushed till 2022. I guess what are some answers with regards to those challenges that we're facing on the civil side? Because we're hearing that there's a lot of constitutional criminal cases that have to be heard by statute pretty much as soon as juries come back.
Right. 2022 seems way far off. I hope not. I hope we don't stop all civil trials until 2022. I'm sure we can do something. Part of getting cases resolved requires having an end in sight. So and that's part of the reason that cases are not moving forward, at least maybe on the criminal side, I think. I don't have a jury trial that I can hold over somebody's head and say, this is it. You either take care of it now or you're going to trial. It works for civil trials as well. So cases are going to be lingering if I start saying, oh, the next civil trial is not going to be until 2022. So I refuse to say that civil trials are going to be pushed back. Now, in any given day, if there's a criminal trial that is going to move forward, obviously that's going to take precedence over a civil trial. But and there is going to be a backlog of criminal cases. I have about 80 cases that are set for trial in any given month. That was before the pandemic. So just add 80 cases times how many months have we been at this? 3 months, 3.5 months. It's adding up. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of cases, but I'm still gonna push cases to trial. And that's why the main thing I'm doing now is making sure that discovery and the civil side is making sure that discovery disputes and dispositive motions are taken care of now. I have a lot of people filing motions to continue. I guess it's the summer and they have jury trials set in August and September, and they know that they're not going to go because of the situation we're in. I'm not inclined to grant those motions because otherwise we lose them forever. I've been in the civil side. I know how some attorneys just put it off. Once trial is not going to be until X date, there's no reason for me to get anything done. And then at the last hour, you're filing a motion to continue because you didn't get anything done. Not that it's your case, Mr. Caso. I'm just saying generally that was my experience in civil practice. So I'm not postponing cases until 2022. In fact, I only have a handful of cases set for January of 2021. Every other case is set between now and January. And that's family docket, civil docket, and the criminal docket. Because one way or another, we're going to get these cases taken care of. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you for being here. Anything else? Are the civil lawyers actually they're moving their cases along, Mr. Caso?
Yes. No. We're kind of still moving them along. I'm just afraid that some of those more complicated ones, like you mentioned, if we don't have a jury trial or even a trial to hold over, the parties' heads, then there's this incentive to just hold off, I think, before resolving.
Some of the things that I think the court can do is maybe set deadlines for dispositive motions, which would require that discovery be taken care of if you're filing a no evidence motion for summary judgment. And then the court can say, well, you had enough time. It would obviously require a judge to actually rule on the motion for a no evidence motion for summary judgment and just really put parties' feet to the fire, and also a deadline for mediation. And a party can say, well, that's the deadline. If we don't do it by then there's not going to be any mediation afterwards. This is your one chance. Those are kind of things that I think civil lawyers can use with the help of the court to make sure that the cases keep moving along. I mean, they're not waiting for a jury trial, but in the 464th, you'll have a jury trial. I think we're barely starting to go into January right now. And it's a pretty lame excuse if you're saying, oh, COVID is not letting me do my work. Sorry, civil lawyers. I have a little violin playing for you. I'm just gonna be blunt about it.
Judge, this is Jose Caso.
Yes.
Again, I had the opportunity to speak with a fellow colleague of mine, another attorney that represents some municipalities, and he expressed that he was really happy with the way that you were conducting the civil trials. He felt that a lot of the rulings that you had were extremely fair, free of politics, and just wanted to bring that up. That he mentioned that he was very impressed with the way you conducted everything and how mature you appeared from the bench, and he just had great things to say about you.
Well, I appreciate that. Without politics, go figure. Well, that's, one of the good things about not having been involved in politics before and just having been completely away from any political function and a donation or any campaign in the judicial system has been just complete ignorance of that whole political world. And I'm very glad and happy that I was never a part of that and that I'm still not a part of that. So I appreciate that. I'm glad that that's coming through, because that's how the judiciary should function. And I really take that to heart every day. Thanks, Mr. Casa. Anybody else have any questions, any comments about what we've talked about today? I think we've had a very good discussion, and I really appreciate everybody being here. But if you want to use this as a soapbox, please go ahead.
One quick question, Judge.
Yes.
Have you reached out to the sheriff's office to provide electronics so that y'all can do Zoom, so that y'all can help yourselves with the cases and stuff?
So the sheriff's office does have, they've created these pods in the jail where they'll have the defendants 8 at a time, I believe, just observing the CDC guidelines. That's how many people can fit in that particular pod at any given time. And the courts have slots. So my court has Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're able to access one of the pods so that we can have the defendants. And then on Fridays, if needed, we can have access to, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Is it Monday and Wednesdays are the 464th states for bringing in on Zoom, bringing in defendants. And then on Fridays, it's a kind of a free-for-all for courts that may want to, if they have any further business. And we do it at 8 at a time. So I'll have an 8:30 docket. And then if there's more than 8 defendants that need to come in, then it's a 10:30 docket on a Monday, and then again on Wednesday. So I think it's been working well. At least for me, it has. It's been good. And that's why I've offered some of that time to attorneys that don't have access to their clients, because I have that access. Use the court's accessibility to defendants, and I can set civil cases at that time and just that one criminal case and put you on a breakout room. So yeah, we have that access to the defendants. And it's actually, I think it's been working pretty well. This may remain with us until after the pandemic is over. I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed, and then not having transportation issues and having defendants being brought into the courtroom. I don't know how security is going to be in the new courthouse and how that's going to work, but it would certainly address the security concerns that we have with the current courthouse, in which defendants are roaming the halls with visitors and other litigants and lawyers and judges and staff, and there were certainly some security concerns there. So I think it's workable. I think it works so far.
Judge, this is
Yes.
Fonseca. So one last question now that you mentioned that. I guess for some of us attorneys that have been away from the courthouse for the last 3 months, what does the courthouse look like on a given weekday nowadays?
It is the emptiest I've seen the courthouse in my entire time practicing law. It's empty. And I think I've seen 1 or 2 fellow judges walking in or out of their courtrooms or into the courthouse. But I haven't seen any lawyers. On the 3rd floor where the 464th is, I've seen 2, 3 deputies, and that's it. That was the last time I was there. And I personally, you're looking at my courtroom right now. This is where I hold court every day. I don't go to the courthouse either. I'm proud to say that since March 19th, we've been a 100% digital court. Everything's done online. So I don't have to go. The only reason that I end up going to the courthouse is because my 2.5-year-old and almost 1-year-old just can't be still for longer than an hour. At least my wife can't keep them quiet for longer than an hour. And if I am going to be here for a while, I just head over to the courthouse for a bit. But yeah, it's empty. Not because we're not working, but technology just really helps us. It's been very easy, at least for me. It has. Maybe being one of the younger judges, it's been easy because I just have lawyers e-file their exhibits beforehand. If we're having a contested hearing, everybody has access to them. I share them with Zoom on the screen. This is what I'm looking at. This is what you're looking for. It's been easy to do, and so there's no need to be at the courthouse, at least not for me. But yeah, it's not you know, the profession is about being with people, and that's the legal profession, and all the people that help and bring in the system. It's about that interaction. So it's awkward that you don't have that anymore. You know, I'm walking into the courtroom whenever I have been, and you're kind of tempted to, you know, talk and be out with the deputies, for example, that are outside the courtroom. But then there's that whole social distancing, and then do you shake hands, not shake hands? Do you do a fist bump? Awkwardness that goes on. And it really it doesn't lend itself to having that interaction with people. It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate effect of the pandemic, but so I'm very much looking forward to this being over, as I'm sure everybody else is.
Judge, I have a quick question
Sure.
before we end. I know your court is very jury trial heavy. My ex-trial partner is in your court as a prosecutor, and you know, I'm sure you know my judge. We love trials in the 430th too. Going forward, I know someone had asked about what are we doing about the constitutional right to a jury trial, and I don't know if you had seen the article that came out about, I believe it was Oregon, who resumed their jury trials in the midst of the pandemic. And just besides health and safety concerns, which I think are paramount for everybody right now, there were concerns from both prosecutors and defense counsel about, okay, so let's say you pick that jury in that auditorium. How do you sit them in the courtroom? And I believe in Oregon, they had set them in an L shape. So there were actually jurors behind defense counsel and prosecutors. And they both sides, you know, had an issue with that about, well, I can't see the jurors' faces. I'm looking for their reactions. I can't tell if they're paying attention or not. And then reactions about requirements to wear masks. You know, several jurors were wearing masks because they were concerned for their health and safety in the middle of the jury trial, and they could not see most of the jurors' face. Same thing with witnesses who were testifying. So since I know the Board of Judges has discussed when we finally do come to an end and we're able to start drawing jury polls again, have those considerations also been discussed about? I know you mentioned a little bit about not really getting a genuine cross section of the community, which I think both sides is looking for on a jury trial, but those concerns also with how do we proceed? How do we question? How do we, how are we going to do witnesses when we have these impediments that we've really never had before in the practice of law thrown at us?
Right, and it goes back to our profession requires that human interaction without face masks and plexiglass and whatnot. So, and I thought a lot about that before things got bad, and I thought, you know what, there may be an end in sight back in May. Maybe I was being a little naive that things were going to go away that quickly, but I did think about that and the way some of our courtrooms are just so small. My courtroom is very small right now. Observing CDC guidelines on distancing, only 8 people can be seated in the gallery. So what I had thought about doing before, obviously, using a tape measure and seeing where people could sit, I was thinking of using the gallery as the jury box, and then having lawyers sit in front of the bench. There's a plexiglass that can be that you can put in front of the bench and then in front of the court coordinator, and have the witness sit in the middle of the wall of the courtroom. That's how I envisioned it. But only having, if we follow CDC guidelines, only 8 people will be able to sit in the gallery. So that was back to square one. How else could we do it? So we'd have to have, I think that we should have a courtroom, one of the bigger courtrooms, like I think the 92nd is probably the biggest courtroom in the courthouse, and then doing kind of that system where the gallery is where the jury sit. And we purchased in the 464th face shields, not just face masks, which I believe experts have said are just as efficient in preventing the spread of the virus, and then just having them for individual jurors, and that way you're able to see their faces, make sure they're not nodding off, they're not yawning, and lawyers can see those reactions and know when they need to move on, or try to engage the juror. So I think that's probably the best thing to do. Just have designated courtrooms, even the auditorium, if it's needed. Using the auditorium as a place where you can have a jury trial. It's challenging, yes. That auditorium probably does not lend itself to having the setup of a courtroom, but we're going to have to, because people need to have their day in court. So we're going to have to work that, and if we're going to have to, use auditoriums or spaces, rent spaces from school districts, for example, and we're going to have to do that. And at least I would push for those alternatives, because we can't not move forward once things start dying down, and we're taking those precautions, and we're ensuring that we do get a good cross section of the population. If we do that, and we make sure that people understand that when they're called for jury duty, then I think we'll be able to resume and have a fair trial for defendants.
Thank you, Judge.
No, thank you for that question. All right, Ms. Bettis, Ms. Sanchez, anything else? All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciated the discussion, talking about what's happening, what we should do, what we have been doing, and for your time. Time is very precious, and that's something I appreciate from people. So until next time, thank you all, especially also those that are on YouTube and Facebook watching this discussion. I appreciate it. And then not having it be all about politics once in a while during this time is also very welcome for me. So thank you all. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Jose.